DeepSeek has been making waves in the AI space, and a lot of you have been asking me to cover it on this channel. Today, we're going to put it to a test side by side with ChatGPT to see how they handle a simple CTF challenge. And since I'm a big fan of OpenAI's new O1 model, I'm really curious to see how they stack up. But before we dive in, I want to hear from you. Are you enjoying these AI videos as much as I've enjoyed making them? Just drop me a comment saying AI down below and let me know if you want me to make more content around just AI, applying AI to hacking, or even just using AI for bug bounty hunting. All right, now let's jump into it. For this video specifically, I'm going to use one of the labs from my paid bug bounty course. And don't worry, you don't have to buy it to follow along. You can just watch the video for free. But if you want to purchase it, there'll be a link down in the pinned comments. But what I'm doing is I'm taking an existing lab and we're just going to feed it to one of these models, or both of these models actually, and see what they come up with. The cool thing about this lab specifically is that if you identify the backend, there is a known exploit for it that we can use. And I want to see if these models are able to identify this vulnerability and give us a working proof of concept. The last AI video that I did was just like a, hey, here's a vulnerability. It was very, very simple. This one requires a little bit more logic, and it also needs to kind of follow along and ask me some questions. And I'm also going to instruct it to give me these specific questions or things to try out to identify what vulnerabilities exist in this application. So let's jump into it and launch it really quickly. So this is what our CTF currently looks like. And the only thing we have here is our first name, last name, and an address. And if we go to orders and click on our view invoice, it is going to create us our invoice using a PDF renderer of some sort. We don't know what's in the backend. It could be Chrome, it could be some library, it could be anything that could make a PDF for us, for example. And what I'm gonna do here is now I'm gonna say, hey, I'm doing a CTF, of course with authorization from the company, because we don't wanna get rejected, because we're doing some hacking, and we say, hey, it requires us to exploit a vulnerability. The website allows me to enter my name and my address, which then gets reflected into a PDF. This is really important because it is going to help us identify a bunch of different vulnerabilities. I'm also going to tell it, hey, ask me whatever questions you want that could help you exploit this. And we're going to send this off to both DeepSeek here, and we're going to send it off to OpenAI. I'm going to start with looking at DeepSeek really quickly, which is kind of describing the entire thought process for this. And if we go to the O1 model, we can see that it's doing the same thing. And it is saying that understand the PDF generation process. It wants us to look at common libraries, for example, WK-HTML to PDF, which is very, very common. DOM PDF that I've never seen in the past. And a couple other things. And sometimes it might be a simple server-side script. It's telling us to look at the PDF content, but then it's telling us to specifically look to inject some HTML and scripts within the name and address field. This would be the first thing that I would try as a bug bounty hunter. And it's great that ChatGPT is also telling us to do the same thing. And it's just saying, hey, put a simple H1 test and see if it renders it and see where it goes. It also wants us to try these special characters with different encoding. So maybe that could help us bypass it or get something in there. Then it talks about template injection, something that I know a lot of people miss when it comes down to PDF hacking. And this is great that ChatGPT is telling us to do this. Actually, this one right here is one of the most common ones that I've seen across a bunch of different apps in the past. And it's so cool to see it actually think about this and telling us to look for 49, because if the template injection exists, 7 times 7 is going to just show 49 if it renders the template that we're giving it. And then it's also telling us to do patch reversals in case we can. And it's also saying to do SSRF, which if the HTML thing that we are trying in the first step works, then second step would be an SSRF. So it's also really, really cool to see that out there. And it's looking for clues, reviewing the PDF metadata, which is great, looking at the logging. And then it's saying general pen testing CTF tips that we can look for, but I'm going to skip all of that because it just seems like it's giving us some explanation of things to try. So far, O1 model has done a really good job, but what I was really hoping it would do was to also tell us, hey, you should try and point this to a URL that you control just to see what the backend is. Maybe that would be the next step, but let's see what DeepSeek tells us, which it looks like it's doing a lot of thinking with all the writing that we have here. But if we scroll all the way down, we're going to see that it is doing the same thing. It says, hey, try HTML and JavaScript injection. It is telling us to look for server-side template injection, very similar to what we did earlier. This ERB one is great that it's actually naming it. FreeMaker is a very common one as well. It's really, really cool to say you can also escalate this to RCE, which I don't think we saw here with template injection that is going to give us remote command execution. So maybe I could do a self. No, it didn't give us anything with self. So it looks like this is actually giving us a path to RC, which is very, very cool. I love that. Telling us to do some command injection, maybe the URL or something that we put in there gets passed into a script, which is kind of cool to see. It's giving us a lot of different ways to try it. And then it's telling us to local file read XXE, which is really, really cool because this would probably be one of our solutions at the end. And it says to try a out of bound server, also really, really cool. And then the rest of it is kind of similar to what we saw earlier, but neither one of them has told us to try anything with iframe, which is fine, because now we're going to go back to our application and just confirm that we're able to do an HTML injection. So I'm going to add a underline test123 update. And as soon as it updates, we're going to go to orders and create a new invoice. And we're going to confirm that we do have HTML rendering inside of this PDF. So what I'm going to do now is say I was able to get HTML inside of the PDF. What should I try next? And we're going to send it to both of them. What I'm really hoping here is that one of them is going to say you need to identify the backend, because that is one of the things that I teach all of my students. You need to identify what is on the backend and start doing your research specifically to that backend and see what works and what has worked in the past, are there known exploits for it, and so on. And hopefully by looking at this, we can see something similar, which says you have done both. That is great. Include image. That's fine. Test for server-side request forgery, which it's giving us payloads, but it's not giving us anything for us to be able to narrow down what we're going against. So it's just giving us a bunch of payloads and payloads and payloads. It's saying putting it all together. So it does really want us to try to see if we have JavaScript, which we can try. And looking back at this one, it looks like DeepSeek is going full blown. Let's exploit this. I don't know if it's much better, but what I'm going to do here is I also have XSS working. I can get a script document.write hello to work. How do I identify the backend for this? So it looks like now it is saying why identifying it matters. Sure, we know we want to identify what's in the backend, but it's still not giving us, maybe we can do a user, yeah, there we go. So we can do a network request in user agent by pointing it to our website. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do exactly what it tells us. We're going to go into here. I'm going to use something like interact.sh. So I'm going to take this URL. I'm going to go back to my lab and I'm just going to do a image source HTTPS to this website. And we're really going to hope that we make a request here and we get the backend information. It looks like it is doing a similar thing here for us. It's telling us to pretty much, let's go up all the way. It looks like it's telling us to do the same thing. It says test SSRF to identify internal services. And it's telling us inject an image pointing to your server and check the user agent for the request. This is what I want. The Exfil tool is a really good place to go and do this right off the bat, but I genuinely love doing the entire iframe and just making the request go to my server, because the user agent seems to be a better way of getting cleaner data than looking at the Exf tool. So either one of those are great options, but I just really wanted to see if it's going to think about SSRF by pointing it to a server that we control. So let's go back into here. We're going to go to our application, click on orders, start our invoice again, and there's nothing in here. But if we go back to here, we can see that there is a user agent, and the user agent is Prince10. This one specifically, I know that has a vulnerability, obviously, because I've created this lab with Adam, but I want to know if either one of these models, either ChatGPT or DeepSeek, is able to do anything with it. So I'm going to say, I just got the user agent. Are there any exploits we can use to read a local file from the server? And we're going to send this to ChatGPT as well. And going back and forth between the two, let me just close these tabs really quickly since we won't need them. It is doing a little bit of thinking. I feel like this is a lot slower than GPT, but let's see what it says. So it says means your HTML payloads are being processed by Prince version 10 on the server. Great. It is great explanation here. It is telling us to do an image tag to file etc password. That will not work because that is not an image. So it's not going to load the contents of a text file into an image. So -1 points to GPT. It's telling us to do some styling. That is sometimes helpful to see if you can maybe HTML inject into the document to get a server-side request to identify the backend. But I don't think this is also a good solution here. It's telling us to do object, and we go down, it's telling us to do more image source. I don't think this is a really right approach. And it says to look for doing the different restrictions. And it's also telling us to look for known Prince XML version bugs. This is what I wanted to do, but it's not talking about the vulnerability itself. So it says combine XML. It says combine with your existing XSS. Still not what I wanted to. Try local file read. These are not what I wanted. So far, GPT was not able to give us a solution. Now let's go to the other one. And it looks like it is giving us a right exploit. So I'm going to go back all the way up. I know I kind of spoiled it for you guys because I'm so excited to see this. But it looks like it is saying that this specific agent indicates that the server is using Prince XML, a commercial HTML to PDF converter. Older versions of this prior to 12 are vulnerable to XXC. There is a known vulnerability, and DeepSeek was able to tell us exactly what that is. And it's telling us, hey, here's an XXC. And here's what you should try. So if I do etc password xxc, it is going to work, but we need to host this somewhere of our own. So it says then you can try local file inclusion. It's giving us xxc LFI, which is kind of similar to what we were trying. And it says out of bound extraction, which is also another option. And it says you can host this on your own. This is exactly the solution that I wanted it, because I know that Prince has a vulnerability on it, and it is giving us exactly this. So what we have to do now here is just host this somewhere. So what I'm going to do here is quickly switch over to webhook.site. What this allows you to do is very similar to interact.sh. It's just a web server that you can control. But the cool thing here is that you can also change the content that it displays. So you can see right here, the content type is set to application XML, because we're going to put XML on here. And we're also going to have it read file etc password, and we're going to call this entity xxc. And then down below here, we're going to say call this xxc and put the contents right in the middle of this body for us. So I'm going to save this. It is going to give us a URL. So it's right here. It's this one. When you click it, it's going to copy that into your clipboard. And if we put this into our iframe, what it's going to do is it is going to point this entire PDF generator to this web page. It is going to render the XML that is untrusted and is supposed to just ignore into the browser, and then show us the contents of file etc password. And if it is successful, once we open up our invoice, it is going to show it to us right away. So if I open it up, it is actually doing the etc password for this box, which we can just abuse, and we can just go further by maybe changing this into a local IP. Actually go back into here. We can change this into a local IP, maybe like localhost, for example, and see if it also has access to the internal network within this machine, which it should, because we already have identified it. But just to be safe, it looks like actually localhost doesn't work. But the cool thing here is that we're able to use DeepSeek and fully identify a vulnerability, but not only identify a vulnerability, but also use it to come up with an exploit by providing it the user agent on the backend, which also tells me that DeepSeek is probably a little bit ahead of O1, because right off the bat, it was able to tell me exactly what to look for, what vulnerabilities to look for, what versions of it are vulnerable, and then give me a working proof of concept. So as a bug bounty hunter, as a hacker, red teamer, if you have AI, if you have access to these kinds of models, you can definitely use them to create the POCs that you want, or you can take POCs that have been created or you have created in the past, give it to them and have them recreated. But I just think with this example, DeepSeek may have been better, which kind of hurts as someone who really likes OpenAI and what they have been doing, which goes to show there's a lot of room for these AI models to grow. And I had to kind of hold its hand, and it wasn't asking me the right questions or giving me the right information. But if you know what you're doing, using AI to hack something, especially with bug bounty hunting, is 100% doable. That's it. That was the entire video. Let me know in the comments if you enjoy this kind of content. I want to make more AI stuff. So drop me a comment saying AI, especially if you want me to make content that's about more recon and bug bounty hunting while leveraging AI. So drop them down below, and I will see you all in next week's video. Peace. Which kind of tells me DeepSeek is probably a little bit. XQC back at it with a. Oh God, I can't talk.
Hey, I did pretty good. Hey, 30-39 on my second game with controller. I'm doing pretty good, no?